Welcome back. Congratulations. You have an opportunity to take a listing. You got a listing call. You weren't expecting it. You have no listing presentation. You're not prepared. Maybe you haven't been on a listing appointment in a long time. What do you do? Well, this is our crash course on what not to say or do on a listing appointment. So make sure you take these notes seriously, because in a lot of cases, if you're a little crusty and rusty on your listing appointments, if you're a little bit crusty and rusty on how to actually list homes in this market, you're definitely going to want to have our notes. And by the way, our notes are available for you for immediate download only on our newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com. So if you're not a subscriber, you know what to do. And remember, when you do subscribe, you've got to confirm that you want the subscription by, essentially confirming it in your email. So you drop your email address into harrisrealestatedaily.com, the website, and then the website sends you an email. You must confirm, and then you're going to start getting the subscription. That's the only way to get our notes. So make sure you take these notes, you print them off, and you have them there in front of you at your desk. And because you're going to have some interesting listing opportunities over the next 60 to 90 days. So you better be ready.
All right, perfect. So thanks for that intro. The question is this: what should you avoid saying or doing on a listing presentation? Whether you're presenting to a good friend, a referral client, or a colder lead, there are some universal mistakes that you must avoid if you want to actually take the listing. The good news is that all of these things are easy to remember, and Tim just showed you how you can turn this into a checklist. So get the notes, and prior to any new listing appointment, make sure you go through this and catch yourself.
And I have to say, so these are these overview points are to supplement, I would say, those of you who have not yet learned our 7-step listing process. We're doing this podcast in the event that, let's just say, you're not a coaching client. You don't have the 7-step listing process. You don't have your pre-listing pack. You don't have your listing appointment. Because we do get a lot of people that'll join Premier Coaching, and then we'll get messages through customer service, and they'll say, I'm joining Premier Coaching today. I need to learn how to list properties because I have an appointment tomorrow.
Yes,
Yeah.
The 11th hour call.
Exactly. We get a lot of those. So make sure you're not that agent. But if you are, this is what the content for today is supposed to do. We want you to get we want you to get the listing, even if you just joined coaching. And so these are some very basic, very, very, very basic things that you need to be paying very close attention to. Point number 1 is absolutely do not arrive late.
Early is on time is late, and if you're late, you'll lose. People have varying degrees of tolerance to an appointment showing up late, so err on the side of caution and always be early. If you miscalculate and get there too early, well, use your time to drive the neighborhood and become even more familiar with the streets, the amenities, the parks, other homes for sale, and so forth. It's better than being late. And I always tell this story. You and I remember it. We went on a listing presentation, and the guy met us at the door with his legal pad. And we knew we always like to be late because that's kind of the last appointment, because it's the closing position. He had written down the other two agents and exactly what time they had arrived, 5:17, 5:21. So obviously for him, that was a big deal. But don't arrive late.
There are a lot of people that are doing that. They're actually keeping track of whether or not you can do the very basics, like showing up on time.
What is a basic? It's a show of respect. And I've had new coaching clients tell me very commonly that they had a previous coaching relationship and their coach kept on rescheduling and kept on showing up late. It is a basic show of respect and honoring the other person's time.
Now, point number 2 is something that's a subtle point, but it's also another sign of respect and consideration for the seller. Do not park in their driveway. Now, you have to adjust accordingly if it's like a 10-mile long driveway. We actually were looking at a property in Austin, Texas. It was called Long Road Ranch, and the road itself was probably about 3 miles long. So in that particular case, maybe you can park in the driveway. But for the most part, do not park in their driveway. Julie?
That's right. You're either parking somebody in or taking somebody's spot. If their teenager has to drive to soccer practice and you're blocking them from leaving, then your appointment mojo will be completely messed up with this awkward interruption. So park in the street. Again, a show of respect. And you also just don't want to get off your mojo during an appointment.
I'm going to give another little sub point here. So now we teach you guys to go on listing appointments so that you go once and then you basically list the house. But in some cases, depending on the nature of the house, you might want to go twice. And I'll tell you, and again, this isn't one of Julie's points, but something inside of me thinks that at least 100 of you are going to value this information. If you're going out to list luxury real estate, it's normal to go to the house maybe twice, sometimes 3 times. And I mean something that's going to be really the very top end of your market, Because if you don't do it that way, the seller is going to see the fact that you went there, saw the house for the first time, and then all of a sudden you felt comfortable putting a price on it. They're going to see that as a show of disrespect towards them and the house. After all, how could you have ever assessed value just by walking through the house over, 15 or 20 minutes or even an hour? So in those cases, you want to go out and you want to do a two-step listing presentation. Sometimes you can do that in lesser expensive homes, but the problem you also ultimately run into by doing a two-step listing presentation is if you're competing and the other agent basically closes on the for the seller prior to you or in between your appointments. So you go out there to preview the house, which is typically the way it works. You're getting to know the seller. It's not a high stress situation. It's just, getting to know them a little bit, seeing the house, admiring all their things. We teach you guys how to do this in Premier Coaching. And then your next appointment is like, say, 3 days later, but they meet with somebody who's more, let's be honest, skilled, and they can close on one appointment. In between your first and second appointment, you're not going to take the listing because the other agent will essentially have gotten the listing away from you. So you have to adjust accordingly, but do keep that in mind that especially on the upper end type real estate, it is normal and natural to want to, for the seller to expect you to want to see the house more than once.
You're talking about a two-step appointment versus a one-step appointment. And,
right.
It's not like a universal filter you can put that through, but what really helps you gather your facts and decide whether it's appropriate for a one-step or a two-step is the pre-qualification scripts, the seller's situation,
That's right.
their time frame, the level of house at some degree, whether it's custom or not custom, that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly. So think about what Julie just said. For example, if you're listing homes in a neighborhood where everything's the same, well, really, there's not that much difference between one or the other, right? But if you're in a full custom or semi-custom, then there are a lot of nuanced differences. But I'll give you something else. And we teach you guys how to do this in Premier Coaching. When you're pre-qualifying, you've got to know if you're competing. And ideally, and we again teach you how to do this when you're pre-qualifying the seller, we want you to know who you're competing against. So if you're competing against other agents in your marketplace that are going to be one-stop listers, and if you do a two-stop, you're probably going to set yourself up for failure. And the opposite is also true. So keep all these things in mind.
But you wouldn't have known that if you weren't using the pre-qualification scripts and questions, right?
Exactly. And by the way, Premier Coaching is the perfect time of year for all of you to join, obviously in preparation for the new year. Just go to premiercoaching.com and you will have a full 30-day access to Premier Coaching, including a daily semi-private coaching call. So make sure you immediately go to premiercoaching.com and become a member of Premier Coaching. And you are, second you become a member, you're going to have full access to the first level, which includes your 2025 fill-in-the-blank business plan, a lot of scripts, objection handlers, pre-qualification things, all the things that we talk about on a regular basis. We're sprinkling a lot of that information in on level 1. You love this podcast. You won't believe the content inside Premier Coaching. It's next level. It's what all of you need for the next natural step in your real estate business. And did I just mention to you, dear listener, that it's free for you to join? So just go to premiercoaching.com, or if you'd like us to text you a link, just text the word Premier to 47372. All right, Julie, point number 4.
Point number 3, avoid discussing politics. That's okay. Avoid discussing politics, especially, post-election and all the rest. Politics are not relevant to the sale of the home, and no matter what you say, you've got a 50-50 shot of being in contention. This also goes for your social media in most cases, right? So depending on where you live and how far one side is or the other, make your own decision, but at least consider what maybe you posted recently. Don't invite conflict. It's best to be a Republican, both online and off.
In other words, be both. And if you have posted some things that may be a little bit, divisive over the political season that thank God we're through now, you might want to go back there and purge some of your social from all that stuff, because every seller is doing a search on you and looking at your social before they actually invite you out to the house. So you got to make it so that when they're looking at you, they're not going to find anything that's objectionable. Otherwise, you might not even get the call out in the first place to have the opportunity to list the house. Or frankly, when you get there, they're not going to list the house with you because you posted something 60 days ago that they found offensive. So just be very sensitive. And remember, your highest and truest purpose on this planet is to be of service to other people, right? And to be of service to other people as a real estate practitioner means you have to appeal to as many different people as you possibly can. So be a Republican.
Yeah, that's called versatility, right? And that leads us, related to point number 4, don't make the appointment all about you. Make it always all about them. You're there to be of service. What are their needs, their motivation, their time frame? What are their priorities? There are scripts that we talk about in coaching that we teach you that help you ask questions to bring out their time, their motivation, time frame, etc. Don't talk about how busy you are, about a deal you're trying to save, inspection and financing drama, or how you're going to be out of town for 2 weeks. They don't care about any of that. They care about your ability to solve their real estate needs.
And everything that we teach you in our 7-step listing process as part of Premier Coaching, you will be amazed how little of it is actually you talking about you, because everyone's favorite topic is themselves. And if you want people to love you, show interest in their favorite topic and get them talking about themselves and their situation, as any real professional service provider does. Like, can you imagine going to a doctor and the doctor just filling your head with all the things that he plans on doing this weekend? I mean, it's just not professional. No. So you got to remember that, yes, people love you and you're a very, I think, influential, attractive person, all the rest of it. But don't make the appointment about you, because if you're competing, which you're going to be doing constantly in this new market, you're going to be competing against people that are professional enough to know to, move the energy that would have been used to have the agent be braggadocious and talking about themselves, and move it towards showing sincere interest by asking thoughtful questions of the prospective seller. That's going to be what's going to keep you in a position of power and true influence. And Julie and I are working on a new podcast explaining the difference between reputation and brand. And, at the end of the day, you want a reputation of someone who is caring, competent, that can ultimately solve the problem of getting the home sold. And it is a challenge in this marketplace for a whole bunch of different reasons. So just think long term. How do you want to be thought of? Because that reputation is what's going to get you more call outs. And we've, I think, proven to you guys in the last few podcasts that after 5 years, virtually all of your business, 84% or something, is going to come from centers of influence and past clients. But that's not universally true. If you basically have bought all your business and not actually made it so that you had a great reputation amongst your past clients, you're not going to be getting any referrals from them. So this all goes back to the core levels of things that we teach you guys in Premier Coaching. Julie, next point.
Next point is number 5. Don't forget to ask for the business. The definition of close, as in closing for the signature, is the logical ending to a great presentation. Assuming that you did a great job presenting, you followed our 7-step listing process, you have a really killer pre-listing package, assuming that you did all of the things, closing becomes easy, conflict-free, and results in a signed listing contract.
And so the 7-step listing process is, and Julie's going to add an 8-step, but we'll
I think we have 7. I think you have 6 and I have 7. But
she and I will negotiate. Okay,
yeah,
so the first one is lead generating. Write this down. The first step in the 7-step listing process is lead generation. Second step is pre-qualifying. Third step is...
Well, you skipped my second one already. So lead generation, why is that first? Because all deals start as a lead. If you are not good at lead generation, the rest of the list doesn't matter. I insert furiously fast lead follow-up because I know that you're not going to catch all of those calls. You're going to have voicemail, you're going to have email. And if you sit on those leads, they're no longer leads. They're going to list with somebody else. Then pre-qualification.
So personally, I think lead generation and furiously fast lead follow-up are synonymous, but that's a little nuanced difference that she and I...
That's okay. We can agree to disagree on that.
But the point is you generate the lead. You obviously don't want to let the lead sit in a CRM or some drip campaign. You want to call them.
Or answer the phone in the first place.
And don't delegate the pre-qualifying. That's another enormous mistake, having a VA or an assistant pre-qualify. Mm-hmm. You pre-qualify, especially all of your listing leads yourself. I do not care how busy you are, because you're going to do a way better job of actually creating more multiple transactions and opportunities, because you're going to ask better questions. Mm-hmm. You have a more honed in intuition than even your best assistant, and you're going to feel that this person, the seller you're talking to, also has 10 other properties that they're thinking about selling, or knows, you know what I'm saying?
You're going to use the script more than an assistant would.
Only experience gives you that level of essentially intuition. And so to think you can delegate something as important as, pre-qualifying to somebody else and get the same level of results as you get is an enormous mistake. So you got to pre-qualify. And when you're pre-qualifying, you're finding out what their time frame is, their motivation. Not always the same thing, by the way. You're going to find out if you're competing with anyone else. You're also going to find out, using our pre-qualifying script, what they think the house is worth. I'll give you guys a little...
Before you go.
Right, before you go. And one of the, so here's one of our sayings. You guys should adopt this as well. If you don't know, don't go. So if you don't know if you're competing, if you don't know what they think the house is worth, if you don't know their motivation, their time frame, chances are you're going to walk into the listing appointment, you're going to be caught flat-footed, and you're not going to take the listing. So, Mr. Seller, this is like 3/4 of the way into the pre-qualifying script. So, Mr. Seller, I'm going to be spending an hour or two working on your CMA. It's basically an agent's version of an appraisal. So help me choose the comps that I should be using for your house. What houses have you seen sell? I'm obviously aware of everything that's sold, but in your opinion, what have you seen sell in your neighborhood that I should be considering to use as a comp when putting a correct price on your house? And then shut up. And here's what you're going to discover. And this is true. You'll laugh. The seller already has a price in mind. Now, if you just ask the seller, which is a stupid question. I know a lot of coaches try to get the agents to ask.
Rookie mistake.
Mr. Seller, what do you think the house is worth? The seller is always going to say, that's why I'm calling you out. And then all of a sudden you have this adversarial relationship with the seller. But if you ask the same question the way I just gave it to you, what you'll discover is the seller's going to tell you what they think the comps are. They're going to say, well, there was the house that sold down the street, but we had an extra bedroom, and that one did have a larger lot. And so you write that one down. And you just basically have this back and forth. But the main thing is to shut up and listen to what the seller has to say. Because eventually what they're going to say, you're going to have your computer open and you're going to see the seller is going to say, and that one I think sold for $750. And you're going to say, yep, that's right, $750. And then the seller is going to tell you about another one, and that one sold for $825. And the seller is going to tell you about another one, and that one sold for probably, $835 or something. So you've got the seller's comps in mind. They're thinking probably, being a seller, they're thinking the highest comp. They're thinking $835. You've already removed, prior to even showing up to the listing appointment, you've already removed one of the greatest stressors of going on a listing appointment, knowing what the seller thinks about the price.
Yes, it's huge.
Right. And so when you walk into the house, now next step, moving past that, is you want to deliver a pre-listing pack. And our pre-listing pack basically is your silent salesperson. It's designed to do the selling for you prior to you going on the listing appointment. It is going to it's going to explain to them how your commissions work, how your service guarantees work, how your, all the things that again result in agents losing listings. We wrote all these things down, all the questions that you absolutely live in fear of having the seller ask you, objection. We're covering them in the pre-listing pack. And now I'm going to tell you guys something that's magical about that. When you deliver our pre-listing pack with obviously your information to that seller prior to the listing appointment, you pretty much at that point won the listing, because you've removed from their life something that was giving them stress. You've already removed the issue about, what happens if I'm not happy with the service you're providing? What happens if, explain to me how your commission works. Explain all the questions. The seller does not want to confront you with all those questions. The seller does not want you in their house taking up a bunch of time where they have to interrogate you. The seller does not want the stress in their lives any more than you do. When you realize that and accept that, then what you're going to realize is by giving them a pre-listing pack, by removing the stress, they're going to thank you. Okay. And in the pre-listing pack, you're going to give them a net sheet, and the net sheet's going to have 3 different, variety. If it sells for this, if it sells for this, it sells for this. You're not saying a price. You're giving them different, essentially a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to include the listing paperwork. And on the listing paperwork, you're going to fill it out minus the price. And you're going to show them where they're supposed to sign. You're going to do all of this ahead of time and deliver it to them ahead of time. Why? Because the seller is going to want to review the paperwork before they sign it. So give it to them prior to going on the appointment. Follow our 7-step listing process. Then you're obviously going to show up. And then you want to show up on time. And we have take your shoes off, do all these things that we teach you in Premier Coaching.
And close.
And then present on the list. You're going to do a little presenting. Our listing presentation from stem to stern, depending how big the house is, lasts maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Remember, the seller doesn't want you in the house.
But you can only do a presentation like that. I hesitate to even call it a presentation. Really, you're just solidifying everything and answering maybe a couple of extra questions.
Because at that point, they already know what you're going to do to sell the house. They've already seen your marketing plan. They already know about your commission. They already know about your service guarantees. They know all about your risk reversals. They know about the listing process, the listing term, all the things. They know about what their net's going to be. All the crap that agents usually trip over in a listing presentation, completely resolved prior to you getting to the house.
That's the 7-step process. That enables you to get the signature when you are there. Now, if or when you skip any of those things, you're like, oh, I'm not really comfortable, asking what the price they have in mind, or whether you're competing. You skip those things. Those are the pitfalls that cause you to not take the listing.
That's right. You know what, Johnny? I'd love to list with you, but the fact is I've got 3 other appointments after you with other agents. Don't. Exactly. So I was talking with so-and-so, and they told me that the house was worth not $835, but 865, and here your comps are telling me this because you didn't ask them what they thought the house was worth prior to going out, because you didn't ask whether you were competing. We want you to position yourself to be the last agent that they're interviewing. But if you don't lock them into committing to not listing with anybody else prior to a meeting with you, then you're probably not even going to get an opportunity to go to their house because they're going to cancel the appointment. You've got to know what you're doing if you really truly want to be competitive in this world as a listing agent. And it's incredibly important that you don't wing it, because the opportunities to list houses, they're too expensive. You lose a listing opportunity. It's not just one seller and one commission. On average, it could be, depending on the price point, 4, maybe 7 other deals. The seller's going to buy something. You sold the house yourself. The neighbor's going to list the house with you.
Your open house throws off 3 buyer leads.
You guys get it?
Yep.
That's the reason listings are so powerful. And so you've got to learn that you cannot be winging it. Working with buyers historically has been physical work, opening doors, giving up your nights and your weekends, walking around, obviously. Driving around, physical work. Working with sellers has been mental work. Well, guess what? Now with the changes with regards to exclusive buyer agency and the rest of it, they're both mental work. So if you have to choose where you're going to put your efforts, and you do, because you only have so much, time, energy, and all the rest of it during the day, definitely focus your best energies on being listing agents.
Yes, but it is a system. There is an art to it. You do have to concentrate on what you're doing. You do have to upgrade your skills. Now, I know that there are many of you listening that say, well, I've taken every listing I've gone on. That's because they're your friends or your past clients, and they weren't that hard on you. Those days do not last forever. If you need more listings, which every single one of you listening does, not all of them are going to be your best friend or the person that closed with you last year. So you've got to upgrade your skills. And I would also contend that just because they are doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same process that you would give to a stranger.
Well, exactly. Every single seller, every single listing appointment, it doesn't, to Julie's point, it doesn't matter if they're your best friend, your mom, or a stranger. The system that has to be exactly the same every single time. And if you take the people that your centers of influence and past client types for granted, and you don't pre-qualify them, and if you don't send the pre-listing pack, if you don't do all the things, you will be, honestly, you'll probably not take the listing because somebody else did follow a more formal process. Because the competitor that you didn't know you were competing with another agent, let alone 2 or 3 other agents. Well, they were also coaching clients of ours. They did follow the listing process, but you thought you had it in the bag because this was your neighbor from 10 years ago and your kids grew up together or whatever. So you basically skip the formality of actually, sending the pre-listing pack and the rest of it. Then you lose the listing. Now you probably lost a friend, and not to mention the fact you're not going to get any additional business that you would have otherwise gotten. You guys get it? You've got to get your acts together with regards to professionalism. We've made it as easy as we possibly can. Go to premiercoaching.com or text the word premier to 47372. Again, go to premiercoaching.com or text the word premier to 47372. In the meantime, have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.